starts hanging half 100 on them at Owen Field, or the run rules on the diamond at Loves Field. We're giving you the breakdowns, the bets, and the hot takes from the perspective of two former OU Athletics employees. You're listening to the Mainline Podcast with Tyler Burton and Adam Jacquez.
Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Let's go. It's the Mainline Podcast. He's Tyler Burton. I'm Adam Jacquez. We got a loaded show tonight. We're talking defensive depth chart predictions, pre-spring, of course. We're looking ahead to the fall season there. And then we'll be talking a little bit of stickball with the Loves Field home opening weekend happening here in Norman. And then, of course, baseball getting off to a great start against Wright State, lighting up the scoreboard there. We may talk some basketball. We'll see as things unfold. Unfortunately, our recording time lined up a lot with basketball this weekend. So I always hate talking about games live while they're happening, but we'll see how things go with the women's game probably wrapping up here in a moment. Tyler, how are you this evening?
I'm good, Adam. Women's basketball is in a nail-biter, just going under 1 minute in the final stretch of this game against Texas. Fantastic basketball game. Shout out to Jenny Baranchek's group. But yeah, things are good, man. Super busy up here. It's nice that I think winter is we're on the other side of this thing. Spring is in full effect here, coming up pretty shortly. That means golf is going to be taking place. You know, that always makes me happy. So yeah, man, things are good. We're just a few more weeks away from the guys getting back out on the practice field, spring football getting underway. And as everybody looks forward to that April 20th spring game coming up here, a chance to see, Jackson Arnold, what he looks like, some new faces that were part of this recruiting class that Oklahoma just signed. A lot of excitement around this program right now. Oh, and by the way, Oklahoma softball is just moving into a mansion, as Patty Gasso called it, this upcoming weekend. So a lot of good things going on right now at OU. Can't wait to dive into it.
Well, let's tell all those players that are about to run out onto the practice field here in a few weeks where they should go and whether they should be on the bench or on the starting field. Let's do our defensive depth chart predictions.
Yeah.
If you missed last week, we did the offensive depth chart. So you'll see that in your podcast feed if you're listening there, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can find it right here on the Red Dirt Media channel. Let's go ahead and take a look at the graphic here. I'll make it a little bit larger here for those that are watching. Basically on the, here's what we've predicted. Now, of course, look at this. And unlike offense, unlike wide receiver, probably where it's just stacked across that wide receiver room, we look at this and we go, okay, well, I see, a name that maybe shouldn't be on there that is on there, or maybe a guy that is playing at a different position, or maybe there's someone that's not listed. Then you look at it and go, okay, where is that guy? Why isn't he number one on the depth chart? We're just purely guessing here. It's kind of what we think will shake out at the end of the day. There's a lot of moving parts. And honestly, that's a good thing if we think there's somebody that's maybe not listed at all on this graphic that could be a starter, because that means there's a ton of depth across the board for this defensive unit. So that's a good thing. I'm sure we'll get lots of comments both on YouTube and on Twitter when we post this later on in the week. But Tyler, let's start with that defensive line. Starting in the defensive end position, really, you've got PJ and Ethan Downs as your two starters, with Caden Willard and Ethan R. Mason Thomas backing those guys up.
Yeah,
let's talk a little bit about that. A lot of guys there that maybe are on that list that could be by the time we get to that first game, though.
Yeah, like you said with this defense, as we go through spring football starting up here in a couple of weeks, this is going to be fast changing. This is, this is going to be an opportunity for a lot of these guys, some of these guys that are proven veterans, like a Dejon Terry, like a Caden Wooler transferring in that's, played a lot of football at the collegiate level. I think that we do kind of want to start out this segment here talking about the news that kind of came out of the Brent Venables interview that he did with Gabe Eichert and Teddy Lehman that released a little bit earlier today on the Oklahoma Breakdown. It sounds like all indications that, number 95, Jacob Lacey is actually looking towards possibly retiring for medical issues. Sounds like the blood clots are continuing to, kind of be a problem for Jacob. So ultimately, that's a horrible thing for Jacob, as a person, but also as a football player with what he's done, in his short amount of time at the University of Oklahoma. I know that a lot of people around the program, a lot of fans especially, were excited about what Jacob was going to be able to do going into this upcoming season. He's perfect frame for what you want in an interior defensive lineman in the SEC. So we'll see how it ultimately shakes out. We'll wait for something to be announced. But when you look at the guys that Oklahoma is going to be rotating in Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis's room over the course of spring football, a lot of really, really good pieces that these coaches are going to have at their disposal. You talk about, the edge guys, and this is something that has really kind of been I don't want to say it's plagued Oklahoma over the last few years, but really outside of Eric Stryker, Obo, if you want to throw Nick Benito in there as well, Oklahoma really hasn't had a true difference maker that's been a consistent disruptor on the edge in terms of getting after the quarterback. And I think that Oklahoma has got a couple of guys in that room right now in a PJ Adebawore or a guy, like an R. Mason Thomas who, when this kid is healthy, you see what that high motor, that, that build, that versatility, how, elite of an edge player he can actually become. So again, I'm very, very confident, very excited about the edge guys. It's the interior, Adam, where I think a lot of there's going to be a lot of different decisions that have to be made, a lot of different rotations that are going to have to, kind of come together. Obviously, a lot of the focus going into this spring football is going to be, okay, what are the true freshmen like? We've been talking about it for the last 18 months, how big of a priority Oklahoma's coaching staff made that defensive line group for the 2024 class, and the fact that you've got David Stone, Jaden Jackson, Nigel Smith coming in that are going to be a key part of this, getting early reps in spring football. Very excited to see what these guys are going to look like. And then we haven't even touched on, some of the guys that are going to be coming back, like a Dejon Terry, like a Grayson Halton. This is going to be a very, very fun position battle to watch over the course of these next 6 to 8 months, because I think that while Oklahoma does have a lot of talent, they also have a lot of inexperience. It's just a matter of how fast can this coaching staff get these guys to grow up. That way they're ready to go come the month of September.
Yeah, unfortunately with the potential retirement there from Jacob Lacey, that, is a guy that's got a lot of experience and leadership from that role. So you'd like to say, okay, Grayson Holton, like, here's your time to show the internal growth that this program is developing. He's a guy who's going to go into his third year as a Sooner and kind of pave the way potentially for more guys like David Stone or Jaden Jackson, or maybe even Nigel Smith if he's a guy that slides inside there. I think that's probably where he ultimately ends up on this defense. And then you look at the outside, like Danny Okoye. He's kind of described as that freak of nature. Like, is he going to be able to push some of those guys on the outside there? So I think there's a lot of pieces there. There's a lot of different ways you could look at that. Not all these freshmen are going to have a big impact in year one. I'm trying to think of anybody on the defensive side of the ball that I really can't think of any so far in Brent Venables' 2 years that, year one as a true freshman has made a big impact. Now, we haven't had as many of these like elite top 15, top 10 type of defenders yet. So maybe that could change, but it is still a difficult thing to do. So we saw it last year with PJ, maybe having a year that maybe we weren't quite expecting. Doesn't mean he's a bust or that he's, done or anything like that. Like, some guys just develop at different rates than others. So I don't think it should surprise OU fans if David Stone has kind of a quiet year and maybe someone else like Grayson Holton has a great year. We'll see. And I think there's probably going to be another piece that's added to this team in the spring portal window, because you just need some more depth, especially when you lose a guy that's probably expected to be a starter like Jacob Lacey is. So
sure,
we'll see what happens there. As far as anyone else on that defensive line, I know we've named a bunch of names there, but R. Mason Thomas, I think you want to get him healthy. Anyone else that maybe is top of mind for you there that you think, hey, this spring portal season is really important there, that or not portal season, but spring practice season rather, is really important that they really show out and develop and carve out their role on this starting defensive line unit?
For me, I think that this one's pretty easy. It's got to be PJ, right? I mean, make no mistake about it. He was the 5-star. He was the guy that was so highly touted, highly sought after amongst all the elite programs across college football. A guy that really, coming into this past season, he was a guy over the course of the year, his playing time, you started to see the level of production go up. You started to see the number of snaps continue to rise. And this is a guy that really, Adam, you could even make the claim that this is a guy that doesn't even truly know how good he can be, or really how even that edge position is played at such an elite level. He's got all the measurables. He's got the athleticism, the versatility to be able to, both get after the quarterback, but also, be a force in setting the edge in the running game. So I think that PJ is a guy where when you go from year one as a true freshman, that jump that you make in that first full offseason that you have, You get the extra reps, you get that extra coaching with the staff and with the strength and development bunch that you just simply didn't have a year ago. I think that PJ is a guy that it is absolutely critical. He's the guy on that defense that takes the next step going into next season, because when you look at the schedule, and it's a daunting schedule that Oklahoma has in front of them, there's a reason why Vegas had the over-under set at 6.5, now up to 7.5. There's a lot of really good football teams. I think Brennan Venables said that there's 6 top 15 teams on Oklahoma's schedule next year. So there's not going to be any cupcakes, maybe outside of Maine. It's going to be it's going to be a tough, grueling schedule from top to bottom next year. And Adam, we haven't even talked about Ethan Downs or Trace Ford. So again, we talk about competitive depth being a part of this program, being a focal point of this program with what Brent Venables is trying to do, transforming this roster. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of tools in the tool belt to play with. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys.
Trace Ford
she hit it. She hit it. Sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry for everybody watching.
I don't know if that's bad podcasting, bad YouTubing, or great YouTubing. We'll see. But
fantastic.
We're watching women's basketball, reacting to that live as 3-pointers hit there for Oklahoma to take the lead with 4.5 seconds left. We'll try to keep it here on football. Trace Ford, he does feel like the forgotten guy in that room right now. Like he
had a cleanup surgery this offseason, so he's going to be healthy.
And health's always been the issue for him. He's got talent. Like he showed that in his first year or two at Oklahoma State, and then like injuries just started piling up, and he really never really had the production after that point there. So you kind of wonder about like, okay, I think honestly a lot of OU fans probably just forgot he was even on the team because he was a super senior. Now he's like that 6th-year COVID senior. So I don't know. You just wonder, like, does he have something in the tank left?
Well, and I think another guy that kind of falls into that same category, he obviously hasn't played, the same amount of football as an Ethan Downs or even a Trace Ford, but I think that this is another big offseason, a critical spring practice, kind of training camp, for lack of a better word, for a guy like Grayson Halton, who a guy coming in, had wasn't necessarily the highest recruiter guy, but he was also a player that in Brent's first year as head coach, having Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis, Grayson Halton was a guy that they thought was a bona fide steal that they were able to get towards the end of that recruiting cycle. So again, this is a guy, he's been in the program for over 2 years now. He's put on the weight. He's got the frame. Obviously, he's got to get a little bit stronger, got to get a little bit more mobile in the weight room this offseason. But make no mistake about it, Grayson Halton, this is a guy, much like we talked about with PJ, this offseason is where, you can really kind of set the table for yourself to have an impact type year for this football team going forward. And they're going to need him, especially like we talked about. You lose Jacob Lacey if he, ultimately ends up medically retiring. It's a next man up mentality. So Grayson Halton, this is your time, buddy. Let's go.
Let's take a brief break from the defensive depth chart. We'll finish that defensive line group and move on to linebackers here. But Oklahoma gets the win as we react live on the show here in women's basketball over Texas. That means they clinched the Big 12 title in the regular season. An excellent finish there. OU trailed most of the game there. Texas's size really gave the Sooners a lot of problems there, but Oklahoma able to just weather the storms, hit a lot of 3-pointers. If you're looking for fun basketball to watch in an OU jersey, it's the women's team. You got to be watching this team because
100%.
Far more entertaining product right now than the men's. That's not really a knock on men's. That's kind of how the men's sport is right now. And the way that Jenny Baranchak has constructed this Sooners basketball team, they're just a blast to watch. You got players all over the place that are contributing there. I think, as I'm watching live, I think it was Lexi Keys that hit the game winner there.
Yep.
With 4.5 seconds left. So incredible job from Jenny and the girls.
Yeah, Adam. I mean, I don't think it has as much to do about, this being the better basketball program at this school right now just because the men's team is down. I think that you just really have to highlight the fact that what Jenny Baranchak has done, and we'll get back to football here in a second, but obviously this is happening live. Oklahoma wins the Big 12 championship, hitting a last-second three to knock off the University of Texas. Back-to-back Big 12 championships, the first time that they've done this since 2006, 2007. And again, Jenny Baranchak, who she's got to be on the short list, not just for, Big 12 Coach of the Year. She's going to get that. But you also have to make a claim that this has an opportunity for her to be in the National Coach of the Year discussions, because this was a program, this was going to be a team coming into the 2024 season that not a lot of people were high on. They weren't near the top as far as preseason picks to win this conference. And they started out the year a little bit tough, ultimately, dropped a few games that they ultimately shouldn't have. But this team continued to battle. Jenny put them in some good positions. A lot of young players were able to grow up. They were able to rely on some of the veteran experience that they've got. And lo and behold, this team, just won their second consecutive Big 12 championship. So there's going to be it's going to be a lot of excitement. It's going to be a lot of fun watching this team progress into the month of March. But make no mistake about it, this is a fun scene to watch right now on ESPN Plus. So huge shout out to Jenny Baranczyk and the Big 12 champion women's basketball team.
Lexi Keys hit that shot almost at the exact same spot that McCollum hit his game winner against OSU and Stillwater. So two really incredible clutch shots there from 3-point range. Oklahoma, before this game, projected as a number 6 seed in Corvallis, Oregon. So you'd have to think beating the number 3 team in the country jumps you up to probably in that host territory of at least a 4 seed. I would like to think maybe even Oklahoma could find their way into a 3 or 2 seed with a win at Kansas this Saturday and have a nice showing in the Big 12 tournament as well. So I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about women's basketball, especially next week, as they're just absolutely surging right now. Probably won't have very much men's basketball talk on tonight's show just because it's hard to do that. They're going to be live still when we finish the show, so we probably won't cover that very much. Let's talk about, going back to football here, let's talk about the linebackers position, and we'll group the cheetah position in with the linebackers here because they're kind of an X factor for this defense. So before we talk about that, though, Tyler, I want to tell you about our sponsor here at the Main Line. It's Factor Meals. They're quick, they're easy, they're no mess. They deliver them right to your door. There's 55 plus meals that you can choose from. They're delicious. They're chef inspired. And I tasted 6 of them last week. They were incredible. I hope my mom's not watching because I ate more zucchini, more green beans, more vegetables in general than I pretty much ever eat. And she knows me. I'm one of the pickiest eaters out there. So I loved it. It was all delicious. It's actually cheaper than doing takeout. So it's great to take with you to work or, on a crazy weeknight. It's great meals to have. So we love having Factor here as one of our sponsors.
1,000%, Adam. In the day and age where everybody is so busy, with work and family lives, so many extracurriculars going on, it's easy to fall into a habit of not having the healthiest diet. But this is where Factor Meals comes into effect. Quick, convenient, quality ingredients, super nutritious. Adam, what were some of your favorite meals that you tried? Because there's a lot of variety that Factor, puts into effect for these guys.
The garlic pesto pork chops were really good. Had a cauliflower rice with it. I don't think I've ever thought like, oh man, I want to eat cauliflower rice, but it was really good. I even enjoyed the Caribbean tofu. I've never really had or explored much into tofu, but I was like, okay, that's kind of got some nice flavor to it even. And then I actually really liked all their green beans. They had 3 different types of green beans that I had across the different meals that I had, and they were excellent. Probably my favorite dish out of all of them, though, was the sun-dried tomato chicken in a creamy sauce. It was amazing. So thanks to Factor Meals for sponsoring the Main Line. They've actually hooked us up here with a special code that you guys can use as listeners to get 50% off. All you have to do is head to factormeals.com/mainline50, and you could use code mainline50 to get 50% off. That's code mainline50 at factormeals.com/mainline50 to get 50% off. We've got that linked in the show notes, both on YouTube and on the podcast. So make sure you're checking out Factor Meals. So we appreciate them sponsoring the show. Let's talk about the linebackers there. That cheetah position, kind of the X factor one there. I'll throw this back up here so people can see this, but at the cheetah position, I know we're going to get some comments. We're probably going to get some people saying, oh, where's Kendall Dolby? Brent Venables just mentioned him there. I think that's very fluid. He's probably going to get some opportunities there, but maybe he ends up more at safety where we have him listed actually here. But we've got Dasan McCullough, number 1, and then Justin Harrington, number 2 at that cheetah position. But I think everything's kind of up for grabs on that cheetah position as far as where we are today.
Yeah, and I think that the cheetah position is going to be one where you're going to see 3, possibly even 4 guys, battling for playing time. And I think that this is going to be a position group, Adam, where, as you go through the course of this 14-game season, hopefully we hope that it's more. But this is going to be a position group where the guy that you see on the field, it's going to be heavily predominant, based on the team that we're playing, the matchup, whatever scheme that we're running against the opponent that weekend. So, you look at a guy like Dasan McCullough, who he's very, very good. He's gifted. He's a more talented player at the cheetah position when he's playing up there near the box at the line of scrimmage. But once you get him out being forced to play man coverage down the field, that's where you start to see Deshaun, struggle a little bit. And to no fault of his own, I mean, you look at the size and the frame. I mean, it's hard at a guy that big, that fast, that strong to be able to run with some of these elite, wide receivers up and down the field. So again, Deshaun McCullough ultimately he's going to be there. It's going to be very excited to see what Brent Venables, how creative he and new defensive coordinator Zach Alley, what they choose to do with him, because I think that he's a guy, depending on the matchup, you could kind of sneak in there at one of the linebacker positions, or you could put him there maybe at edge and get him up there closer to the line of scrimmage. Whatever you've got to do to, generate stops, get some quarterback pressure, Deshaun McCullough is going to be a nice tool that Brent Venables is going to be able to play with. And then you look at a couple of the other guys as well. Justin Harrington tore his ACL a year ago, hasn't gotten word back from the NCAA, but Brent Venables said today they fully expect for him to be joining them as a part of this team for this upcoming fall. And then the guy that doesn't really get enough credit or, really get enough, conversation about him is Kendall Dolby, a guy that, came in from the JUCO ranks. He was a guy that Brent Venables said they wanted to be able to start him out playing on the perimeter, maybe possibly corner. But with, kind of the way that the year unfolded, he just kind of slid into that cheetah position and really just kind of took the baton and ran with it. He played that well consistently for the entire season. So again, this is going to be another opportunity for these guys. We've heard that there's even some possibility, the fact that Woody Washington could even be, battling for a little bit of that cheetah spot as well. So we'll see how this thing plays out. They've got a lot of depth, not something that we're used to at Oklahoma, over the last 5 or 6 years with Lincoln Riley, as the head football coach. But Oklahoma, led by Brent Venables, led by Brandon Hall and Jay Valai, they've, really upgraded the talent level in the back end of that defense. So when you look at it, I think Deshaun McCullough is probably your starter. Kendall Dolby's your nickel guy, kind of coming in on the obvious passing downs. But Adam, if you want to go inside and you want to look at this linebacker position, what a difference a couple of years makes. We've got some good quality competitive depth right there, even behind Danny Stutzman and Kip Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely. We only went too deep on all these different position groups. So at middle linebacker, Kip Lewis, backed up by Jaron Kanek, and then at the will, Danny Stutzman, backed up by Kobe McKenzie. I know some people will say, they're probably going to swap. Danny's going to play in the middle. Kip's going to play on the outside. Maybe that's the case. We saw that at times last year. So, again, I think there's a lot of fluidity here, both on where guys are playing, what the positions are called, and also who's backing them up. But I think you feel really great about, okay, you've got Danny and Kip, two highly productive guys that absolutely shined. They popped off the screen constantly over and over again. And Danny's a guy that we talked about, before the season last year, that it was going to be a legacy year for him. Where we're going to remember him more like Curtis Lofton and Travis Lewis and Rocky Calmus and those types of great elite Brent Venables linebackers? Or was he going to be maybe a guy that was like, man, he had good potential, but he just didn't live up to it? And he proved it that, hey, he is going to be remembered as one of those elite guys. So, Tyler, my question to you on Danny specifically, what more do you want to see out of him, specifically from his game on the field this year? I know Butkus is obviously the benchmark there, but what do you want to see out of his game that maybe improves or changes this year?
Yeah, I think I just want to see him take that next step. Obviously, the improvement that he made from year 1 to year 2 in this Brent Venables defense, I mean, the sky's the limit for this kid. So you would have to think another year with Jerry Schmidt, another offseason in the film room with Brent Venables, continuing to, to learn this defense, focus on your keys, learn tendencies, know what to look for, know where you've got leverage, know where you've got help coming from. I think that confidence is probably the thing that's only going to make Danny, that much better this season, because he's going to be a lot more comfortable. Make no mistake about it. I know the Jackson Arnold, anytime you're the quarterback at the University of Oklahoma, you're the face of the program. You're the face of the university. You're ultimately kind of the face of the state of Oklahoma. But make no mistake about it, this is Danny Stutzman's football team going into this upcoming season. He's the guy. He's the leader. He's the captain of that football team. Where Danny goes, this team will follow. And I think that, this is going to be a huge year for him. The SEC linebacker play, it's just different. When you talk about elite guys in the SEC, like at your Georgias, your Alabamas, this is where the bread is buttered in this league on defense. So you just hope that, Danny, continues to use these next 5 to 6 months, because he's got all the tools in the world to be an all SEC linebacker. It's just a matter of, what can he do both physically and mentally to take advantage of these next 6 months, because this is going to be a big season for him. And, kind of like I said, as Danny goes, this team goes, and for Oklahoma's defense to perform the way that we expect them to, Danny's going to have a huge year. And I would expect nothing less.
Brad in the chat there alluding to the amount of depth in that linebacker room. You've got Kobe McKenzie and Jaren Kanak as far as the two backups that we had on our list there, but you've also got Lewis Carter and Samuel Masigo and Phil Pachotti and Connor Neer still on the roster there, Taylor Heim. You just got tons of guys that are just stacking up at that position there. So I think one thing that's going to be interesting and curious to watch, especially in the spring, is like, and early in the fall too, like, who's a potential portal risk, but also for the guys that do stick around, what does it look like to be successful if you're Jaren Kanak and you're not the starter? I think there's room. I think we saw, Kip Lewis had opportunities before he became the starter there. Kobe McKenzie had his moments and was never a starter. So I think there's room and opportunity for those guys to make an impact still as second stringers.
I think that the biggest difference that Oklahoma fans are going to be able to see this upcoming fall, a year ago, going into that season, and Brent Venables kind of alluded to it, he was scared to death of one of his starting linebackers going down, just because simply the depth, the experience behind them wasn't that good to begin with. And this was a starting duo that featured Jaren Kanak, who had never really started a game at linebacker to begin with. And this is going to be a position group where you just simply don't have that problem anymore because of how well they've continued to recruit each of the last couple of seasons, where you're going to have 4, maybe even 5 guys, because Brent's extremely high on Lewis Carter, what he's been able to do this offseason. He continues to progress, but I think that this is going to be a linebacker core that you can realistically expect to see 4, maybe even 5 guys on any given Saturday, because in this league, the level of physicality, some of the, the brand of football was, some of the way that these teams like to run the football and pound it down your throat. You've got to be fundamentally sound. You've got to be talented, but you also have to be deep as a position group. Oklahoma's linebacker core seems to fit the bill.
Let's move back to the secondary here, and we'll start in the middle here. I know this is going to get up probably some raised eyebrows. We have Peyton Bowen as the second string at free safety with Robert Spears-Jennings ahead of him, and then at strong safety we have Billy Bowman starting with Kendall Dolby at second string. I kind of wonder if Justin Harrington maybe moves off that cheetah role, and maybe Kendall Dolby swaps there. Brent Venables kind of alluded to that earlier today in his interview, but a lot of possibilities here, and I don't think I'm not reading into, okay, Peyton Bowen listed second here too much as like, oh, he's not as good as Robert Spears-Jennings. I just think that there's a lot of combinations and a lot of playing time to be had from that safety position. But you look at that and go, wow, pretty stacked there, at least in that top 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, make no mistake about it. It feels like this is a common theme at every single position group on defense. It's the quality depth that has been built in each of these position rooms. I mean, I don't think that enough credit is given, but you have to really, hand out some flowers, shower, some of these coaches with some praise, because what Brandon Hall and Jay Valai have done transforming this Oklahoma secondary. And again, I still think that this is going to be the position group that I don't want to say I don't have the most questions about going into the SEC, but I think for Oklahoma to be able to, be that top 10, top 20 defense in year 1 in the SEC, it's a huge part of that's going to be dictated upon how well this team defends the pass on Saturdays this upcoming fall. But the fact that you were able to get Billy Bowman to come back for one more year, Woody Washington coming back for one more year, those are 2 guys that are firmly cemented as starters for this defense going into this upcoming season. Gentry Williams, he had the offseason shoulder surgery. He's going to miss spring football. Many people would think, okay, well, that's kind of a bummer for Gentry. But I think that you want to look on the flip side here. Gentry's going to be ready for fall camp. He's going to be ready. You know what a healthy Gentry Williams looks like. But the fact that he is going to miss spring practice, and you're going to be able to give guys like Makari Vickers, like Des Malone, like Josiah Wagner, or even a guy like Jacoby Johnson, who physically, that's what you want in an all SEC type cornerback. So again, look at a glass half full approach here. The fact that Gentry Williams, he is going to be out for this, this upcoming spring ball, that's only going to make the guys behind them that much better, because they're going to get the extra coaching. They're going to get the extra reps. So, but make no mistake about it, when this thing kicks off, I fully expect Woody and Gentry to be your 2 corners. Safety, God, I'm excited talking about the amount of depth on this football team and the amount of quality, talented depth. Not the fact that when somebody goes down, you think that the backup's going to be a liability. No, you're going to have Billy Bowman coming back. You've got Robert Spears-Jennings, coming back that, I think that many people think that he's going to be the guy opposite of Billy. Oh, and by the way, we're totally forgetting about Peyton Bowen and what he's going to be able to do going from year 1 to year 2. Kendall Dolby, Justin Harrington, Jaden Hardy. I mean, sky's the limit. There's going to be a lot of – this is going to be a good position battle. Maybe not necessarily figuring out who the starters are going to be, but who's going to be a guy that emerges, that kind of comes out of nowhere, that builds upon what they did a year ago. It can come in and be a quality 3 or 4, be a nice steady rotation guy that can get on the field Saturdays.
Guy we haven't mentioned there is Kenai Walker. Played a lot at cornerback, and on the depth chart that we have, we didn't list him in the top 2 there. We had Makari Vickers and Des Malone backing up Woody Washington and Gentry Williams. So I think there's just so much shuffling that's potentially going to happen here, but all in good good instances. It's not oh man, we can't find anybody at this field corner position. Let's just shuffle guys around. It's like, okay, we've got Kendall Dolby. Maybe he's not going to be able to get on the field at Cheetah. Well, let's see if we can get him on the field at safety. Or if he's not a fit there, like we need depth at corner as well. I think corner is probably the one position where you go, okay, there's a lot less proven talent there. You have guys that you think really highly of, and like Makari or Jacoby Johnson, but they just haven't played them enough yet, so we don't really know what they are. But I think there is some high-end talent. I think you have enough dudes there that you can feel like, okay, we can go down to third string, on probably both sides of the ball there on corner and say, okay, we think we have somebody. If it's not the second string guy, a third string guy, we'll find a way to get on there. Or maybe we have Kendall Dolby, that's our Swiss Army knife that we can move around pretty much anywhere and find success. So immense depth across the board on the defensive side of the ball.
And we didn't even mention Michael Boganowski as part of that conversation as well.
Tons of freshmen too. Yeah.
Adam, if there's one position group that you think Oklahoma could possibly lose a guy in the transfer portal come springtime, or maybe this is a position group where it's imperative that Oklahoma test the waters with some of the guys that are going to enter the portal here in the next couple of months. For me, I think the obvious answer is the defensive line room, particularly on the interior side. But do you think Oklahoma needs to be aggressive or maybe try to add one more body that can come in and help them?
Yeah, I think defensive line is the most obvious one there, especially on the defensive tackle. Linebacker is the position group where I'm more cautious about, like, are we going to lose someone from that room? Because I think there's studs, and I think Jaron Kanak is a stud. I think he could go play at a lot of different schools right now. Maybe not in the SEC potentially, or I'm sure Mississippi State would probably love to have him. Like, I don't think he's a low quality player whatsoever. I think he's probably got a future. He's going to have some moments at OU. It may be that this is the year that maybe he kind of slows down, takes off, maybe red shirts. I saw someone threw that out in the chat here earlier, but there's lots of guys there.
He probably could have been your best tight end last season if he played that position, if we're being honest here, but we'll save that for another day. No,
maybe.
You talk about it as guys continue to grow, they continue to develop, and the game does slow down for him. So again, Jaron Kanak, as good as he was, he had a few bad stretches of football last season, but what more, that's what you should come to expect from a guy, at the Division I Power 5 level playing football, playing inside linebacker, and of all places, you're playing at the University of Oklahoma, being coached by Brent Venables, arguably the greatest defensive coordinator of all time, but one of the best all-time linebacker coaches as well. So he was drinking from a fire hose all of last season. The game's going to slow down for him. I would expect Jaron to look a lot more comfortable, be able to play a lot faster this upcoming season.
Absolutely. I guess one quick question here before we move off of football and talk softball. Special teams, because we're not really going to do like a special one show dedicated to just the special teams. And I don't think it's super interesting to talk about like who's going to be the kicker, who's going to be the punter, or anything like that. Kick returner, punt returner. Who are your two guys for that right now?
Deion Burks and Billy Bowman.
So, okay, this is interesting. You said this again last preseason that you wanted Billy Bowman returning kicks. So that's still the case, and you'd rather have Deion Burks doing punts, it sounds like?
I would prefer to have I would flip flop it. I would have Deion Burks catching punts. I would have Billy Bowman returning kicks, in a sense. And I know that I've always been, for a lot of our listeners that have been following this podcast for a long time, I've kind of been in the boat of you never want to put your best players in that return game type role, just because of the risk factor of them getting injured. But when you watch Billy Bowman play, and this goes all the way back to his time at Denton Guyer, but especially a year ago, watching him with the ball in his hands after making an interception The one against TCU is the one that comes to top of mind with, how electric this guy is, as a as a runner when he's got the ball in his hands. You got to figure out a way, especially in the SEC, where coaching is going to be one of the biggest difference makers in determining wins or losses, but special teams as well could be the difference of winning one or two more ball games as opposed to losing them. So again, give me Deion Burks returning punts, give me Billy Bowman and Deion Burks back there returning kicks as well.
I'm sure we'll have a lot of time to unpack that later in future episodes.
Yeah, we'll dive into
won't go
special
too far on that, but I wanted to get your pulse on that right now. Let's talk about softball. Loves Field opening day coming up here. There's going to be some really long lines waiting to get into that stadium, waiting to get in for the opening ceremonies there. Before we dive into that, how about a place that's not going to have any lines, though? That's going to be quick, going to get you in and out. 29th Street Tag Agency. They're our other sponsor here at the main line, so we appreciate them. They're located in South Oklahoma City. They're right next door to an insurance agency, so you can knock out all your automobile needs all in one place. They're linked in our show notes, so you can book your appointment online. I know we got a lot of people probably driving down to Norman for some softball games on Friday. You might be able to knock out your driver's license, your tags, whatever else you need on your way down there, so check out 29th Street Tag Agency. As far as softball goes, big weekend, historic weekend for the program. Yes. Loves Field opening up. It's going to be special. The scoreboard looks awesome, looks iconic. It's going to be the new cathedral when it comes to softball across not just college, but high school, professional, the entire world, like the globe. The best softball stadium in all of the entire earth is going to be in Norman, Oklahoma, which is pretty special for all that Patty has built for this program. Every player that's been a part of that, every coach that's been a part of that, every fan that's probably been supporting and has season tickets for longer than this stretch run of dominance. It's a really special moment for the program and for the school.
Yeah, it's a huge moment, and I highly encourage all of our listeners out there to look up, go to YouTube, check out Patty Gasso's press conference that she delivered yesterday when talking about the, not just how nice Loves Field is going to be. And again, if you're going to be in attendance this weekend, I'm jealous. I wish I was going to be in Norman for that. It's going to be a fantastic event. But it's been so nice. Oklahoma softball, they have long been the standard in terms of how you play the game of softball, how you win championships, how you find consistency in dominance as a softball program. But it's nice to see that this is going to be a weekend that's been a long time coming. When you talk about how this is a program that started out at Reeves Park, where they didn't even have the ability to dress at that stadium. They had to get dressed at home or get dressed on campus and then go over there. And the fact that they didn't even have the ability to fit the entire team into a dugout. Patty said that they had a handful of girls that had to sit out there with the fans just because there was simply not enough room.
How cool would that be nowadays, though?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you would have people, it would almost be an auction vying for those seats to try to get access to be able to sit there, that close to some of the players. But they make the transition over to Marita Hines, and you talk about the national championships that have been won. A dynasty has been created at Marita Hines. You talk about the coaches. You talk about some of the all-time greats, not just in Oklahoma, not just in softball, but some of the all-time greats in women's athletics whatsoever. Chamberlain, Allo, Keelani Ricketts, Paige Parker, Sid Romero. I'll throw her in there as well. This stadium that Oklahoma fans are about to walk into this upcoming weekend, just like the Oklahoma softball program as a whole being the pinnacle, being the elite program in college softball, this facility is going to be unmatched across the board in terms of collegiate softball. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. There's not a program on campus, there's not a coach on campus that deserves what she is getting more than Patty Gasso on this weekend. When you see what she has done starting out at the University of Oklahoma a long, long time ago, with what she's built, the sustained level of success and dominance, it almost kind of brings tears to your eyes when you really think about how far this program has come and what Patty has built. And now they finally have the stadium that they deserve. And it's going to help with recruiting. It's going to help the fan experience. I'm just worried, Adam, that they didn't make it big enough.
I don't know about that. I love OU softball. I know there's a lot of fans that are involved there, but That's a lot of seats for softball, a sport that, doesn't draw that much nationally. I know you fans are supported really well, but I'm curious to see how that goes. Like, is every game going to be an automatic sellout for the rest of the year? Like, I'm curious because I already saw standing room only tickets for the opener on Friday were down to like $32 earlier on StubHub. So we'll see how that holds. I'm still very optimistic there. Who do you think gets the first home run there in the new stadium?
I think it's going to be Kinsey Hansen.
Okay.
Just taking a flyer here. I'm going to go with Kinsey Hansen on this, but again, and that's another thing that's going to be fun. That's going to be something that Patty's going to have to kind of juggle as well. It's going to be. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be tough, but the opportunity there to possibly just kind of find yourself caught up in, okay, we're playing in this brand new stadium. It's a huge upgrade. This is the best facility in college softball, but also at the same time, you got a game to play. You got to go out there and you got to kick somebody's ass this upcoming weekend. So again, I think that Kinsey Hansen hits the first home run. Who starts in the circle for Oklahoma? Who do you give the ball to? It's got to be May, right?
Nicole May, yeah.
Gotta be
I would
Nicole
go with
May.
Nicole, and I'll be bold. I'll say the first home run goes to Jada Coleman. She didn't
first pitch.
First pitch, yeah. She didn't start out the top of the order on the most recent game that they had, but traditionally that's where she is in the number one position. And I feel like that's probably the right move. Patty does shift the order around a lot, but I don't know if she'll pay any mind to the fact that this is the first game ever in Love's Field, and who do you put in that first role? And I feel like Jada is probably the perfect person to do that, even if that order doesn't make exact sense. But I feel like you do that, and I feel like, why not? She only has one home run on the year. Maybe she's not. She is building up her batting average. She didn't start off the greatest so far, but she's working her way up to where she was previously, and so. Why not? Let's make her second home run this year, one that goes over the outfield wall at Love's Field for the first time. So, but I agree with you on just the overall idea that, this is a kind of a historic moment. Is there going to be too much focus on the fact that it's a new stadium? There's going to be tons of fans there. It's the home opener. And then facing you across the field in the other dugout is a team in Liberty that really has played this OU team extremely tough. One-run games 2 out of the last three times that they've played. Went into extra innings last year. So the Flames, good program. They're 7-7 this year. They're not nearly as good. Obviously, their best pitchers wearing an OU uniform now. So I've said here on the podcast too that Liberty's had a better stadium than Oklahoma has for the last couple of years. So now finally that's reversed. But you've got some tough teams there in Liberty. Louisiana's a tough matchup there. So you've got some tough teams across from you there. I wonder if OU's going to struggle with any of these matchups though.
I'm going to give you another bold prediction. When you talk about the spectacle and how big of a weekend this is going to be, honoring this program, honoring the coaches, the former players, I think that Oklahoma is going to do a tremendous job bringing back a ton of alumni. They're really going to do this the right way this upcoming weekend when they, for the inauguration of this ballpark. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that all 5 games that they play this weekend, Oklahoma is going to play their best softball that we've seen all season long. I think that this is going to be 5 wins. 5 run rule wins. Run rule all 5 games this weekend.
That would be incredible because that's extremely difficult. I also think there's still a lot of questions for this team. Yeah, they've been dominant. They've run ruled quite a few teams. They still haven't played their best softball.
No,
not
67 in a row, still not peaking. That's okay.
It's crazy to say that. Yeah, it's crazy to say that. Time for some baseball talk.
Ooh.
I feel like I always have to ask permission about baseball, but I mean, they're fun. They're fun to watch.
Smooth transition. Done are the days of this being Adam's optimism, where you've got to come into each one of these episodes and try to find a silver lining when talking about this baseball team. Adam,
that was like 3 years ago.
I know.
It's been a while.
I know.
Yeah.
Skip Johnson's done a hell of a job, over the last couple of seasons. But Adam, you take 3 out of 4 against Wright State. If you're Skip Johnson, sitting here right now, you're 5-3. You're headed to Vegas this weekend. What's the mood around this baseball team? Are you encouraged? Or is there some stuff? There's ultimately stuff that you're always going to want to work on, but kind of what's the temperature in the room regarding baseball right now?
I think you're feeling pretty good. I know, guys like Joe Healy over at D1 Baseball have kind of doubted this team offensively as to like what kind of power they have, and you're still not going to know fully what that looks like just 2 weekends into the year, but we've now had 7 different players that have hit a home run. You've got John Spikerman that's on fire, hitting 517. Michael Snyder, the Washington transfer that has played both third base and first base now. He's hitting 429. And then Jackson Nicholas coming back strong in year 3 after his sophomore slump, hitting 400 now. So I think you really like what you're seeing out of that trio right there. And then to know that, Bryce Madron is playing good. He's having great at-bats. He's getting walked a little bit more over the past weekend than he was getting hits, but we know that he's a guy that can go yard as well. So I think from an offensive perspective, you're liking what that looks like. One of the big questions that we talked about last week was, okay, Easton Carmichael, extremely productive hitter. Can you keep him in the lineup as a catcher, or is he going to be the designated hitter? And he played DH the entire weekend, I think, for the most part. But Scott Mudler was a guy that was playing great defense behind the plate there, and then got his own home run against Wright State. Pretty much everybody was going yard against them. That's a quality ball team. I think that you look at Wright State and you go, I don't know where they are. I don't know who they are or anything like that. But that's a quality program. They play in the postseason regularly. I don't think they played their best baseball whatsoever when they were in Norman. So the scores were lopsided, but you look at that and go, okay, maybe by the end of the year, that becomes a pretty solid RPI win for the Sooners. And you look at that Sunday game and you go, yeah, you would have liked to have seen some better pitching out of Jamie Hitt and Will Carson. But for the most part, that was their 10th game or 8th game in 10 days. That's going to be really tough to finish strong. So I think you feel really optimistic heading out to Las Vegas with where this team is right now. They're continuing to strike out a lot of guys at a high clip. You'd like to see some more from some of your returning pitchers like Jamie Hitt. But, it's just 2 weekends into the year. You have a really small sample size here. But overall, I think mood is optimistic. You have some opportunity to beat some teams in Las Vegas that have names that fans are familiar with, even if they might not be the best baseball programs.
Anytime that you play 8 games in 10 days, that's always going to take its toll on a pitching staff. Doesn't matter how good, how deep it is. I mean, that's a pretty daunting task that Oklahoma had on their plate over the last couple of weekends. But Adam, they go out to Vegas this weekend, like you alluded to, matchups against Pittsburgh, California, Ohio State. Ultimately, perfect scenario, you go out there, you sweep it, you come back home riding high, continue to build that momentum. But what's realistic expectations, or what should Oklahoma fans be happy with? Is it just simply taking 2 out of 3, or does Oklahoma have a realistic chance that they should go up there and take care of business?
I think 2 out of 3 is always a great result every weekend. The best of the best college baseball teams only win about 75% of their games. And we're talking like the number 1 most elite team last year in Wake Forest only won 75% of their games. So winning 2 out of 3 every weekend is a great result. I think these are teams that OU has the ability to sweep. They're not bad programs. Even Ohio State, who's from the Big Ten, which is not considered a power conference in baseball. I think there's the ability there to sweep, but winning 2 out of 3 is a good result. We saw Cal and Ohio State down in Frisco last year, was able to get the win against Cal, lost to Ohio State. So I think revenge is on the mind for a lot of these Sooners there. Pitt is a team in the ACC that's not as strong. Both Pitt and Cal have good records, but the quality of those records, not exactly super strong there. So I think it's an opportunity to sweep there, especially when you don't have a midweek game. You have depth and rest across the board there. Finally, after that 8-game stretch in 10 days. So I think you can absolutely go out there and sweep, and that would be a fantastic result, but 2 out of 3 is still good as well.
I talked about opening up this episode tonight about the weather getting warmer, conditions being better outside, making me more excited about being able to get the golf clubs back out. Ryan Hibble and the OU men's golf program get the win out in Vegas over the weekend. They beat Auburn. They beat Texas by a handful of shots. Huge shout out to the golf program. Ultimately, excited to talk about that as we move through the course of spring practice. Adam, last thing that I have here for you. We worked in the ticket office. One of our sole jobs, our biggest focuses was selling football season tickets, was renewing season tickets. What are you giving on a scale of 1 to 10? How are you rating Jackson Arnold's ability in those cubicles in the OU athletics ticket office? How was the sales pitch?
I saw Jackson Arnold sitting in the chair that you sat in that same cube there, and I thought, man, that's the best seller I've ever seen sit in that cube. No, it is. I thought he was solid. He did a heck of a lot better than Lincoln Riley did on the voicemail that we got him to record way back in the day to send out to fans. So yeah, Jackson Arnold, I'll give him a solid A for his efforts there in the ticket office. I'm sure he realized that Yeah, I need to make sure I'm an NFL quarterback, so I don't ever end up selling tickets in the ticket office.
Do we want to give listeners kind of a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what the first person that he called, what the response actually was? It didn't.
I think that's one you keep in the vault there.
We'll keep that in the vault. But man, he got a real taste of what it was like working in the ticket office on that first phone call. What a lot of the stuff that kind of goes on that you really don't expect to have to deal with. But Jackson Arnold took it in stride. Got a few people to renew their season tickets, and Palace is going to be rocking just a few more months, baby. I'm excited.
Let's do it. Well, we'll be back next week to talk who knows what about football and, of course, all the things that are happening across this busy season of spring sports with baseball, softball, men's and women's basketball, and who knows when golf or some other sports might sprinkle their way in here as well. So we appreciate everyone joining us this week. We will see you next week for the next episode of The Main Line.